warm-up. And during this warm-up, you can come, and if you like to dance, you can join. Dancy will join. Dancy is there, our small friends, and she's there. Hello, Dancy, you can raise your hand. And if you want to join, also you can come onto the stage to share the happiness party. Huh? So, and after that we will have a Q&A with Charlie for 30 minutes. So Charlie is there, and Charlie has asked me with very great gentleness to shorten the presentation in order for you to share with him. This is also another way to show happiness and to give happiness to everyone. Thank you, Charlie, for that. So before warm-up, please, I would like to ask you 3 questions that you reflect in silence. 3 questions you reflect in silence. So you don't need to say anything about this question. I know, the first question, do you choose to feel happy? You choose to feel happy. So think about it. And the second question, do you entertain habits of happiness or unhappiness? Do you entertain habits of happiness or unhappiness? Habits, right? And the third question, does happiness is the truth? So what I suggest, so now it is a warm-up, so if you would like, you can stand up and please stand up. Are you sitting comfortable? Please stand up. And we will launch the...
Pastor, could you repeat the third one, please?
Oh, does happiness is the truth? Sorry for my French.
No,
Is happiness is the truth? So sorry. Is happiness the truth? Sorry. Yeah, so sorry.
thank you.
So, sorry for my French.
No, that's
All right. So I'm still alive. Okay, so maestro. Okay, let's go. So reflect the 3 questions, please now. The sound louder, please. Sound 10. Yes. Thank you. Okay, so everything is ready. Think about these 3 questions. The purpose of these 3 questions is to see from the beginning you have started this evening up until the end how you will improve maybe the way to be happy for you. So keep this question for you in your heart, and also it's homework. Do you like homework? So, all right. So, maestro, let's start. So please stand up if you want. Everyone stand up, I can see that. Because I'm happy all alone, if you feel like and clap the hands. Because I'm happy all alone, if you feel like happiness is true. Because I'm happy all alone, if you know what happiness is. No one wants to dance? All right.
In life, do we choose happiness, or is happiness based on situations and circumstances?
Please clap your hands and all together. If you feel like happiness is true. Allez, Nancy, let's encourage Nancy. You feel like So thank you so much. So, when we have 5 wonderful dancers on the stage, thank you. So, okay, we hope to, you know what is written, time is to be happy now again, so dance, let's dance. So let me introduce now, the time is for Charlie. Please, Raju, if you can come. And please, we invite Charlie on the stage, onto the stage, you can come. Raju will come. Okay. Yeah, okay, so. All right. So, thank you. Thank you. It's just a rehearsal. But just a bit in front. So, Charlie, do you feel comfortable here? Right? And that, yes, okay, that's perfect. Thank you. Okay, yes. All right. The mic is for the audience, so you know. I will introduce Charlie's. Of course, many of you know Charlie's. Charlie Hawes is, first of all, a big hand to Charlie to give. So Charlie is the director of Brahma Kumaris Raj Yoga in Australia and the coordinator of national coordinator in Australia. So Charlie also has practiced meditation daily for the past 42 years. So from his own experience, he believes meditation is an extraordinary tool to maintain mental, emotional, and spiritual health in a world increasingly challenged by anxiety, stress, and depression. Who is not stress here? Maybe me first. All right. So Charlie's personality resonates natural happiness and sweetness. He has an infectious smile. Charlie grew up in Melbourne and studied architecture in Melbourne University, but his lifelong interest in spirituality and philosophy meant that he left his architecture study. No regret, Charlie? No regret, okay. And traveled for 3 years through Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. During this period, he lived in a variety of communities, including Buddhist, Christian, Sikh, Muslim, Hindu, Taoist, and more. Oh my goodness, there's a lot. And did you get happiness in this journey? So he will tell us. So, and Charlie is based in Sydney and regularly visits the retreat center and meditation center around Australia. He was also a regular international traveler, having spoken at forums, seminars, retreats, and workshops in more than 60 countries. Quite a lot. So, Charlie, the mic is yours. Give a big hand. You want to stop it because you want to?
It's okay.
Oh, no, you have beautiful colors. Give happiness. So, that's wonderful.
Are you comfortable with the light?
Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah.
So, okay, it was not expected, this thing.
It's okay, it's fine.
All right, okay. Mike is yours.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It's lovely to be here, and thank you for the very lively start to the evening. I was in Canada 2 years ago in Calgary, and they had an event called Happiness is the Truth, which is the name of that song. And the same thing happened, the whole auditorium got up, and so it's a lovely song. As Pascal was saying, that First of all, I'd really just like to thank you for having us here. It's extremely generous of you. Thank you so much. I'd just like to share a few thoughts, and there will be plenty of time for discussion. And I think that if you're asked a question, you know, what is the purpose of life? I wonder what you'd say. I think philosophers and scholars have debated this question since the beginning of time. But if you ask ordinary people what they feel, you know, 90% of the world will just say the aim of life is to be happy. So I don't think that's really the question, what do I want? The real question for most of us is, how do you get there? How do you move from where you are to this place of happiness? And recently I was reading something in the country where I spend most of my time in Australia. A survey of parents that in the 1980s, when they asked parents, what do you want for your children? Most parents said, I want them to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. You know the list, I'm sure. But now when they ask parents, what do you want for your children? Almost all say, I just want them to be happy. Which I think is something which is, you know, extremely lovely. And I once read something from Sophocles, a Greek philosopher. I don't know many Greek philosophers, but I do remember what he said. And he said that wisdom is the supreme art of happiness. I really love that the ultimate wisdom in life is actually to be happy. And I think all of us sitting in this room would agree that it needs a lot of wisdom to manage life today. Would you agree? I think it needs a lot of wisdom. Then maybe the next question is, well, what is unhappiness? What is sorrow? Maybe we could say, is that the ultimate ignorance in life? And I feel that when I feel unhappiness, when I feel sorrow, life is giving me a little message that there's some wisdom missing. I need to explore some wisdom. How precious is happiness? How precious is happiness? If you Google the word happiness, you get 500 million results. 500 million. And that says a lot to me, because the human spirit yearns for happiness. The human spirit searches for happiness. It's innate in our nature to want to be happy. And another Greek philosopher, I don't know what it is about the Greeks tonight, but Aristotle once said, the meaning and purpose of life is to be happy. And I personally think that happiness is such a powerful thing. You know, happiness can uplift spirits. We've all seen it. Happiness can change an atmosphere. Happiness can transform relationships. And you know, happiness even influences our health. And I have a good friend who lives in the Brahma Kumaris Retreat Centre in the UK in Oxford, Neville. I'm sure some of you know Neville. But Neville wrote a book some years ago. He was the correspondent for the Times, the medical and science correspondent. His book was called Will to Be Well, and when you open it, there's in one page just one statement. And it says the greatest factor in good health is happiness. And I find that really fascinating, because today we listen, don't we? You've got to eat right, you've got to rest enough, you've got to exercise, which is all good. But ultimately, happiness is the most powerful thing to maintain good mental, emotional, and even physical health. Because we know that when you're unhappy, so much research says your immune system goes down and you are vulnerable to illness. And once I was in a school in South Africa, and I had to give a talk to the teachers on psychosomatic nature of the mind, something I don't know much about, but I had to give it a talk. And it was really interesting because it's this relationship between emotion and health. And actually afterwards the principal said to me, he said, you know, I really believe in that. Whenever my teachers have a hard day in the classroom, you know, the children give them a hard time, and they come and they're a bit down, their emotions are down, often they're away with a cold or a flu in the next few days. But actually Pascal, when we started, asked us a question. You know, do we choose happiness? It's a very interesting question because in life you choose a partner. You choose a career. You choose where you live. Do you choose happiness or is it just circumstantial? Is it just good luck? Because spirituality says absolutely clearly that you choose happiness. It is a choice in life. And that circumstances don't dictate. I can have the choice to be happy. And so spirituality says we don't hope to be happy. We don't wait for happiness to come to find me. And we don't look to any person or any external thing to make me happy, because we can never rely on those sources for happiness. And yet we're living in a world, all of us know, it doesn't matter which corner of this planet you live. You know, life is incredibly challenging, and all the data from the World Health Organization tells us that stress, anxiety, depression, the big three of our life today, it's just absolutely exponential. It's growing absolutely exponentially in all corners of the world. And so what does that mean in simple terms? It means unhappiness, fundamentally. And we go along in life feeling sometimes these feelings, and there's two ways really we can deal with it. Firstly, we can become quite bitter and angry about, you know, life has dealt me a bad card. We feel very upset, and we begin the blame game. You know, we start to project onto people, situations, bosses, all sorts of people. In other words, I'm giving the responsibility of my unhappiness to a whole lot of people outside. And fundamentally, it's disempowering myself. I'm saying I have no power. You are the people in control of my well-being and happiness in life. Unfortunately, so many of us live life in that way, convinced that these external circumstances, these people, are the reason my life is not a good life. But on the other hand, there's many people, and it's quite interesting, as much as the anxiety, stress, and depression is increasing, many people are seeking what we call the inner journey. In other words, you come to a point in your life and you think, I have to take responsibility for how I feel. To me, this is one of the most significant steps on a journey to a happier life, when I stop projecting and blaming and say, I need to do something for me. But what do we do and where do we go? You know, my experience is most of us start to read a lot of books or come to seminars or maybe evenings like this. You know? And what we do is we read a lot, we listen to a lot, and it makes a lot of sense. Yes, that's the reason, that's good, that's right. We tell our friends, and it's all great. But after a few years, I wake up one day and I realize I know a lot, but I'm still not very happy. You know that sort of feeling? Because we can intellectually understand why I should be happier, but to make that happen in my life, I call it the information path. You know, we sort of absorb all this information, we read all the books. Once I was in Australia, the Brahma Kumaris in Australia have 3 beautiful retreat centres. There's one in Melbourne, and I met a man there who's a taxi driver. And he said to me, I've been driving taxis for 15 years or something, and I'm broke. And I said, why? And he said, I have a library of 5,000 self-help books. I've spent all my money on self-help books. You know, we read, we listen. But I think when we move from the information path to the spiritual path, and that's really when I sit with my thoughts, with my feelings, with my inner world, and I start to see what is happening and see what quality of thoughts are going to make me feel better and what quality of thoughts are actually feeding my world with unhappiness. And I think that we start to take, you know, a lot more responsibility for how I feel. Because happiness is a wonderful state of well-being. It's a sense of satisfaction with life. It's a sense of positivity. And when you're happy, you feel good about who you are and you feel good about other people around you. And that is like a blessed life, isn't it, when you're feeling, you know, those feelings. But today when we use the word, it can mean many things. And to me, there's many types of happiness in life. One style I call is the fizzy drink style. You know the fizzy drink style of happiness? You know, it bubbles and goes flat really quickly. I think our world is addicted to the fizzy drink style of happiness. And this is what I would call temporary happiness. It's the culture of the contemporary world today. That it's essential happiness. I eat a beautiful food. I go on a holiday. I go and shop. Do you know that one of the main things people do when they feel depressed? Shopping. Shopping. And what happens is you eat the good meal, you go shopping, you have the holiday, you come up, and then you go back again. You come up, and then you go back again. So what do you want to do? You want to shop more, you want to eat more, and so this becomes a very addictive style of lifestyle because, you know, I want these temporary hits of happiness, and I would say it's the main form of happiness today. The second type I call the mask, you know. The mask means that my face shows happiness, but inside I feel completely different. It's quite understandable that I don't want to show an unhappy face, but sometimes what I'm showing to the world and what's really in my heart is absolutely different. And I call this like a superficial style of happiness. The third type, which often exists today, I call the because syndrome. I can't be happy because you said I'm fat. You know? I can't be happy because you don't do the dishes. I can't be happy. There's always a reason not to be happy. Because, I call it the because syndrome. This is the conditional happiness. In other words, everything external has to be perfect for me to feel a sense of happiness or well-being. There's even, I would call, a relative style of happiness. And you know, once I met a man in Australia, and he was a reporter for the news, one of the main news channels. And, you know, he, quite frankly, he was given a brief by his news director, like when you go to this family that's lost a child, you know, it's good if they're emotional, it's good television. And he began to doubt himself, what am I in this job for? And then he began to doubt, why do people sit in front of television every night and watch the news, which is a litany of horrible things often, really unpleasant things. And you know, there's a very strange part to human psychology, that when we see people worse off than myself, I don't feel so bad about my life. It's a strange sort of thing, isn't it? But, you know, these different types of happiness, but we know that there is a quality of happiness that we sort of have a memory of, and that's really what I think we're looking for, which is a sense of well-being that goes to the core of myself and radiates through each part of my life. But I think before we even explore, how to maybe take steps towards a happier state of being, I have to ask myself a few questions. And I think a lot of spirituality is a self-reflection, asking myself my heart honestly. The first question is, where do I seek happiness in life? I feel the biggest myth of the modern world, the myth we have all bought into, and this myth is that happiness is out there. You will give me love, that will make me happy. I will have a good job, make money, that will make me happy. I'll have status, that will make me happy. Does it make me happy? I don't think so. It will give me temporary happiness. But this myth, I call it the outside-in approach to life. I look outside for everything I need inside. And sometimes it works because I do get it, but I have no control. And so I don't have constant sources of happiness, if I can say. And so it's like that outside-in myth, which, we're seeking happiness from. And really, spirituality is the inside-out approach, that I first go to my internal resources, and then I'm starting to work with a more permanent state of well-being and happiness. But secondly, the question I need to ask is, who gives me sorrow? Who hurts me? If someone behaves badly, if someone says something and you feel hurt, you feel upset, what hurt you? Was it what they said, or was it my reaction to what they said? I think it's fairly unanimous. We all know intellectually. And so who gives me sorrow? Myself. Do I really, really, really believe that? Because I feel that if we have the honesty to accept that, my life can absolutely change for the better. Because when you take responsibility for how you feel, and I often call it the first law of spirituality, that I am responsible for how I feel, I think it's like I'm taking the power of my life back once again. And so we need to start to move towards a life of happiness. And how do I start to do that? And I think that really the first step is to have a relationship with my true self. And that is just so fundamental to a quality life. And if I was to ask, who am I? I think of it these days that there's like 3 personalities inside all of us. 2 of them feed me with one unhappiness, but one of them begins to deliver a more consistent level of happiness. And the first personality takes its whole sense of identity from my body. Who am I? I see myself as a whole series of labels. I'm male, I'm female, I'm Indian, I'm Chinese, I'm European, I'm old, I'm young, all the labels. Mahatma Gandhi once said that labels are for jars, they're not for people. Very wise man, wasn't he? So I see myself as a whole series of labels. And this first personality is what I call the I of arrogance, or the I of superiority. And this personality will compare with others and think, I am better, I know more, I am right. And when it starts to come into my feelings, that's when I feel easily insulted, disrespected, not valued, excluded, sensitive. Is anyone sensitive here? I think we're all a bit sensitive. True? You know, and when those feelings, I think that when I experience those feelings of hurt, insult, disrespect, it's like a false I is ruling my inner system. And when I'm under this influence, I start to think, I'm fine, you're the problem. And this is an absolute recipe to feel unhappy inside. Because I've lost awareness really of who I am, and I'm under the influence of a false self. But this I is really, I would say, a mask or a front for the second I, which is the I of inferiority or the I of lack of self-respect. And this I also compares and thinks others are better, others know more, others don't love me, others don't respect me, others don't value me. And when this I is ruling my inner system, that's when you feel hopeless. You know, sometimes those feelings of hopelessness, you feel inadequate, you feel unworthy. I would even say depressed. A great state of unhappiness, if you can say. In psychology, depression is like a sadness that my dream in life to be loved and valued and respected hasn't happened. But in spirituality, depression is like a mourning for the loss of my true identity. And so when the seed of my thinking, my identity is false, it's growing thought streams, emotions, perceptions, which will make me unhappy. Because the seed is false, it grows a tree of unhappy thoughts and feelings. And this is why really spirituality says to sow the seed of the original I, because when I'm under the false eyes, what happens? The I of arrogance and the I of lack of self-respect. I go up one day, I'm down the next day. Up 1 hour, down the next hour. You know those fluctuations? Mood fluctuations. I go up and down. And really, the third I is the permanent self. And this is a major step to re-establishing a state of well-being and happiness within myself. When I begin to think, who am I? I am the soul, the spirit, the Atma. The Atma means I, the living, the dweller in the costume. And I've been sort of practicing this for so many years. I find it absolutely fascinating. The soul exists, but it's just a point. In mathematics, a point exists, but it has no length, breadth, or width. The soul, the consciousness, I am so subtle. And when I start to create thoughts of who I am, the permanent self, I'm immortal, eternal, non-physical. It actually begins when it comes into my feelings. It's like coming home to a place where you feel very calm, shall I say joyful, beautiful feeling. A place where you take all the pressure off yourself to impress people, to look good, to be noticed. You know, I begin to accept myself. And what I'm beginning to do is go to the roots of my thinking, because my identity is the roots of my thinking. If the root is false, that I'm a temporary body, the two children are my ego and lack of self-respect. These two energies are dominating our planet in every way. I often feel if I can't respect and love myself, will I respect and love other people? Will I respect the environment? Will I respect anything? I don't think so. And so I'm going back to the core of who I am. So that first step, I would say, in this journey to building a sense of well-being and happiness, is to know and experience who I am. And meditation is converting a belief into an experience. Because actually 80% of the world thinks there's something more than a body. But how do I translate it? Because when I unpack the truth of who I am as a soul, it creates feelings of peace inside. I really create that sense of peace and happiness. So what I'd love to do is just invite you for a little meditation, just for a few moments. And I'm going to request if you can put down phones and books and devices and just in these few minutes, just try to maintain the gentle determination to keep your mind focused. And in an easy way, just follow the thoughts suggested. In the core of my being, I want to feel happy. I try so many strategies to feel happy, but still sometimes my heart is heavy. The first step to begin a life towards happiness is to know and experience my permanent self. Just visualize yourself as a tiny spark of life energy in the front of the brain and the center of the forehead. Just hold that image. I, the permanent soul, sitting in my temporary body. And as I look at my body, I see so many labels that represent nationality, culture, religion. But I choose to let go of the labels. Just feel yourself moving beyond all the labels that my body represents to this sweet place in the center of your forehead. Just feel yourself so lightly, sitting so lightly. I, the soul, look through the eyes and hear through the ears. But now I step back. The more, the deeper I go into this state of self-awareness, I release the power of peace. Just feel the fragrance of peace in your mind. Your thoughts cooling down, calming down. Everything is okay. I am a peaceful soul. I And in this peace, I feel a joy emerging. A joy of knowing who I am. And I begin to realize that if I want to be happy, I have to base my life on truths. The truth of who I am. It will always take me to a sweet place of well-being. Moments of meditation remind me of who I am and help my mind return to this sweet place of peace and happiness. Thank you. I think all of us here have a love for meditation. Is that true? And all of us here experience sometimes that you sit to meditate with a lovely intent to really have a deep feeling of peace and well-being. But in a split second your mind jumps. And this is because the mind is addicted to that myth that happiness is outside. And your mind has been brainwashed in that way for such a long time that it keeps jumping. This is the patience of meditation, that in time you will learn to internalize your mind so that I can really extract the maximum power from the knowledge of who I am. But for me, secondly, for happiness, I need to experience a quality of love in my life. My experience always is when the heart is full of love, how do you feel? How do you feel? Do you need anything else?
You jump.
She says you jump. Just like we saw them on the stage. It's like when you feel love, my experience is you feel very easy, very relaxed inside, and much more compassionate and understanding of others. And I think the subtext of human life sometimes is this search for true love. You know, and you think you invest your heart in relationships in the family. How much do you give? You give everything, you sacrifice everything. But there's this huge human dilemma that no relationship is permanent. Whether it's time, whether it's change, whether it's conflicts or death, the object of my love goes. And this fear of loss destroys so much happiness in our lives. And what I love about spirituality is that spirituality offers a permanent relationship, the relationship of I, the permanent soul, with the one relationship that always exists, the relationship with the Supreme, the relationship with the Divine, the relationship with God. And yoga, as all of you know, means union. And I often think Whatever I have yoga with, that's how I feel. As you've been sitting here, how many people have popped in your mind? I know everyone's quietly listening, but the nature of the mind is that, you know, you get a thought message, and so a child, a relative, a friend, pop. This is the amazing nature of human thinking, that we receive and send messages and we're picking them up all the time. When you remember a child or something, if your relationship is really good, you feel good instantly. If you're remembering and it's going through a difficult period, instantly you don't feel so good. So the logic of yoga, I connect, I'm influenced, and I have an experience. First I connect, second I'm influenced, third I feel. The logic of Raja Yoga is to find a source for the mind to connect to that is full of everything the mind needs. So when the mind focuses on God as light, God as a permanent source of love, of peace, of purity and power, then I'm influenced by that and I start to experience. It's the most natural thing. And this is really what meditation is. It's learning the art of turning my mind away from the past, the anxiety of the future, what everyone else is doing. You know how our minds are so overactive with so many stories in our head, and turning it in one direction and absorbing the power of this connection. And it sound good? Does it sound okay? Does it sound okay?
Yes.
It's good. I'm pleased to hear that. Is it easy to do? Everyone said it sounds good, then as soon as it But you know, I think it's not so difficult, because this is a relationship. It's a natural relationship. We are hardwired to have relationship. It's intrinsic to our psychology. And where the heart goes, the mind will follow. So when I start to, I'm not meditating on a concept, a belief, a point of philosophy. I'm actually in union with a real living being. I often feel it's like the lover of the soul. And when I really explore this relationship, the power it gives me and the feelings of upliftment is really extraordinary. Because I feel that if I put in place 2 steps, a loving relationship with myself and a loving relationship with God, I've taken 2 massive steps towards happiness. Because I have permanent sources of happiness. And so the very neurotic state of this world, this unpredictable, uncertain world, which one day will throw this at you, the next day something else, when I have these stable forms of well-being with me, I start not to be so influenced. I can really stabilize myself. And sometimes I think there's 3 sources of love. From myself, from the Supreme, from God, and from my family and friends. For most of us, not much love coming from me. Sometimes we give ourselves a little bit of a beating. From God, a lot of people have faith in God. I'm not sure how much they really experience love. So our one source of love is our family and our friends. If there's an upheaval, if there's a conflict, my whole life goes, or a loss, a death, into major upheaval. What is spirituality? Spirituality is developing a loving relationship with myself as a soul, a loving relationship with God, the Supreme Soul. And that platform is such a platform of inner strength to maintain a sense of happiness and well-being as this crazy world just flows around us. It just needs practice. You know, often I feel that spirituality, most of us are here because we have a love for spirituality. But there's 3 ways that we can approach it. We can approach it like a hobby, you know, when you have a little bit of time, I'll do something. And we know how that is, you know. It's always the last thing on the list to meditate or whatever. You can do it as a discipline, like exercise. Every day you can meditate. But what I find with that, that's helpful. But often what happens is the mind just reverts to my old thinking. I meditate, I feel calm, I feel peaceful. As soon as the meditation finishes, my mind goes back to its old sort of anxious, overactive state. And I would say that the third style of meditation is to live it as a lifestyle. And that's when you put a little structure into your life every day. And to me, meditation isn't something that you do morning and night. It's an attitude to life. It's almost like you make a decision that I'm going to live as a peaceful soul. And I'm going to carry a peaceful and happy soul. So first I need to know who I am. Second, this loving relationship with the Supreme. But third, I think, what is the position of my mind? Because often our mind, I often think today is like a vacuum cleaner. You know? We are so needy of love and happiness and peace. If I see a little love, I go like a vacuum cleaner. See a little bit of respect, like that. See a little bit of happiness. You know, I absorb the love, I absorb the peace. But when there's an insult, I absorb that. When there's criticism, I absorb absolutely everything. I have no protection for myself. Because I'm spiritually empty. The nature of the human soul, when it's forgotten itself, it's in this state of body consciousness, there's a huge vacuum. I'm always trying to fill the emptiness inside. So I absorb the love and I absorb the disrespect and hate as well. But the more I have a connection, you feel fuller and you start to give. And the more you give, you don't take sorrow, you don't take disrespect, you don't take insult. And actually the beauty of life is to give. The law of life says, if you want love, give it. If you want respect, give it. If you want cooperation, give it. The law of life says, as you give, you so receive. So the more your mind gives, the less we absorb. Because sometimes I feel that today most of us are highly educated, highly educated. But I think a lot of us have a PhD in taking sorrow from others. You know? Where we're just experts. And if there's sorrow to be found, I will find it. You know? And this is not a way to live my life, because, you know, I just keep absorbing this unhappiness. And yet the natural state of the self really is to feel happy. And so as I start to give more, I start to take less. And I think moving forward, seeing the nature of life today, you know, just the way our world is today, it's essential to do something for myself, you know. That we want to be happy again. It's just the natural state. And really I think to take up a regular practice is something important. And I often feel in Australia, where I live or spend a lot of my time, we have 3 beautiful retreat centres. When people come, I always suggest to them to try a practice of meditation for at least 3 months. Because when you try it for a period, you start to see the change. And it's like you take back the power of your life. The image I have for our mind today is my mind is like a sacred place. Just imagine your mind is like a crystal clear bowl of still water. So still, so calm, so clean. But there's gateways into the mind. The ears. people say things and I think, you know, just a little comment. My mind goes from second gear to third gear to overdrive, you know, just it can stimulate so much thinking. I see through the gateway of my eyes, I see a bad behavior, I see something I don't like. I let it in my eyes, driving my thinking. So it's like I'm a slave to the external world. The external world is dominating how I feel. But when I meditate, what am I doing? I'm sitting down and I'm starting to feed my mind with the thoughts I want. Who am I? I am the soul. Who do I belong to? To the Supreme Soul. So you're taking back the authority of your mind and you're taking back the power to create thoughts to maintain a sense of happiness and well-being. And so meditation practice, I think, is such an important thing to do today. And I imagine, maybe I could ask how many of you are regular meditators. I think the majority of us here are, am I right? Can I ask? Yes, so many of us. So I think that it is really time to be happy again. And if I can say that just the last thing, and then maybe we can, I don't know what's next, maybe it's more dancing or something like that. I'm not sure what's on the agenda. But you know, I think that often there's a saying, purity is the mother of peace and happiness. And really, I've thought a lot about this, that when I realize that when my attitude, my thinking, my feelings are clean, I feel much better. And when you hold stories inside about people, relationships, sometimes we have a whole library of stuff inside our head that makes me feel heavy, doesn't allow me to really feel light and happy. And when I really begin to realize that the more I think in a pure way, the more my attitude is clean and benevolent towards people, the more my actions are like that too. It's definite that it will reap the fruit of a happy feeling inside. What is a pure thought? A pure thought is a thought of who I am and the connection with the Supreme. So, I think we did say...
So, thank you very much, Charlie. Please give a big hand to... So, shall we speak to you like you are the Prince Charming?
No thanks.
No. So please don't transfer your thoughts to Charlie. But I just refer these things from the Sleeping Beauty, because you have already mentioned in our night with this beautiful story of Sleeping Beauty. You know what it is? We are sleeping when we are become angry, irritated, arrogant, and everything. So, and we have this movie in Disney, Sleeping Beauty, and when the Aurora just die, and all the kingdom die because anger, jealousy, everything. So the Prince Charming is coming to kiss these ladies. But no, it's not a kiss of with a mouth, but a kiss of thoughts. So. Thank you, Charlie, for that. and please kiss yourself. Isn't it? So thank you so much for this. So also, I take this opportunity before the Q&A to thanks, to give a big thanks to Sister Rohini, National Coordinator of Raj Yoga in Hong Kong, and also to Sister Bindu. And also, I will, with the national, is a coordinator of Kowloon. And also, I will also give a big hand to all helpers that you have to know, for those who are not in Raj Yoga, all helpers here are volunteers. They give their time, they give their thought, they give their money in order to teach us at the Raj Yoga Center. Please also we can give a big hand. Please. So also thank you for ushering people, preparing tulis and blessing cards and everything. So now is the time for the Q&A. To helper will come with a mic. Please, if you have a question, we will have a 10-minute exchange with Charlie. Take this opportunity to exchange with Charlie. So if you have who wants to ask the first question, or I can start a question. You want Charlie, when you started your journey, your spiritual journey, were you happy? And during your journey, and just a normal question. And when you grow up during your journey, sometimes you were happy, and sometimes maybe you were unhappy. And you know, happiness is like a reactor. You know a reactor of a jumbo. You know how it works? No? The air in front is peaceful, right? And when the reactor is turning, the air is sucked by the engine, right? So how we suck the air, how we let the air in front, peaceful, and we don't react. So you understand, we don't need anymore to any jumbo, any plane, which is not a real good stuff for the air, the 5 elements, the 4th element. So Charlie, can you tell us your recipe when you are a little bit shaky or sometimes agitated? Can you tell us how you do? Because you are prepared. You prepare your money meditation, that all we know, but sometimes in front of you someone pop up and immediately something happens. So how do you do that, please?
I think that when I began to meditate, I would perhaps say that life would affect me quite deeply. I think it's a pretty normal state of being where comments from people or situations, influence how you feel. I think I was reasonably okay, but I would be sensitive to people's attitudes and things around me. So that obviously takes away your sense of happiness, because we allow other people's behaviors, attitudes to dominate how I feel about myself. One thing I think that the journey of meditation, many things, extraordinary changes I've experienced in myself, but I think over the years I've become less and less influenced. That doesn't mean I've shut down, but I feel very involved and connected, but less influenced by things around me, and having more confidence to go anywhere and not absorb a bad mood or a difficult attitude or whatever it may be. And it's really like a freedom. And the reason is, I think that I would say one way of describing the spiritual journey is to rebuild your sense of self-value, your sense of self-respect. Because when that's low, everything affects me. But when that grows, it's like I'm less and less affected, and so I'm taking back, my sense of happiness and well-being. And I think it's a freedom that you have the confidence you can go places and you don't feel that things are going to disturb you or whatever so much. And I think I can say from my heart, I feel pretty happy most of the time. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Charlie. So please raise your hand and someone will come to you with mic, please. No, everyone is happy. Charlie was not needed to give a talk, for happiness. Everyone is happy. So, do you have any question? No question? All right. So, okay. Sorry. Please. Thank you. I was afraid. Everyone is so happy here.
Somebody's got to ask a question, I suppose. Charlie, thank you for coming down. I appreciate it. As a listener, I've got a question. You had mentioned earlier during the talk, you mentioned a point about how your mind, if you set a regular time for you to meditate, you can go into that. Your mind can sort of switch into that mode where, you know, you're calm, you're slowing down, and as soon as you finish, you kind of speed back up again. What do you do about that then? So how would you prevent that from happening?
You know, one of the things that the Brahma Kumaris teach is to meditate with eyes open. And you know, once we meditate with our eyes open. Once I was in San Francisco at the University of California, and there was a woman scientist studying the effects of meditation. Now, if you Google it, there's so much data today. There's proven stuff that meditators can relax themselves. And even in a couple of countries in Europe, if you can prove you're a regular meditator, you get lower life insurance premiums. Because the data shows that they don't get sick as much. But I was a guinea pig of her because this scientist, it's a proven fact, meditators do calm their brain waves and that affects the bodily functions. But she's interested, okay, all of us have to go back into very stressful work environments, sometimes family environments of conflict or problems, you know. So does meditation just stop at that point, or does it influence all corners of my life? So I had to sit in this little room and they attached electrodes all over me. I looked like Bionic Man or something like that. I was there for 6 hours in this little room. And first of all, she asked me to meditate and she recorded my brain waves. And secondly, she asked me to sleep, and it's something I'm quite good at. So I had a little snooze, and she recorded my brain waves. Then she gave me all these problems to do, and I had to, for instance, count backwards from 1017s and give her an answer in a certain amount of time. Geometrical, mathematical, all sorts of things. And what she said afterwards, her research was showing that people who meditate with eyes open actually carry those brain waves into each part of their life. And actually, meditation is for action. A lot of people see meditation as a reclusive practice, but what are you doing? You're sitting in the morning, you are programming your mind with quality thinking that makes you feel calm. And that's setting a pattern for your day. And my own experience, when I first started, I would meditate and go out into the day, and sometimes it was good, but sometimes something happens and you lose it all. But the more you practice, it becomes more your nature. And I feel it's like I've made a decision in my life years ago to live as a peaceful soul. Because when you sort of live in that state of self-value and self-respect, it's the seed of your actions, your relationships, everything. It's like you're going back to the basics to rebuild who you are as a person. But of course it takes practice. We are addicted to being affected and influenced by things. And as you self-respect, your practice goes, it's not that you're unaffected, you just get less and less and less influenced. And you know, once I was in Sri Lanka, in the south of Sri Lanka, in a town called Gaur, and I was a Buddhist monastery there, and I was giving a talk in a temple. And the monk, someone asked me, why do you meditate with your eyes open? And I gave that explanation I just said. And then the monk who ran the temple, when I finished, he said, can I speak? And I said, well, it's your temple, so please, you know. And he said, the Buddha used to meditate with his eyes open. You know how you see Buddha's statues and just his eyes are just partially open? Because in a way, meditation isn't something separate from life. Because what people want today, they don't want a life where one part's my spiritual life and my meditation, and the other part's my crazy life of work. And it's like I'm schizophrenic. It's like two parts of my life make me schizophrenic. But it's actually, who I am when I realize who I am and practice and experience through my meditation flows into each part of my life. And that's why I often say meditation is for action, meditation is for family, meditation is for relationships. It will influence each part of my life. Because, sometimes I think our mind, a whole world happens in our mind. All parts of my life land in my mind. My thoughts, my feelings, my reactions, my memories, my relationships. This is the clearinghouse of life. If you don't do something for this, and especially today, what I'm finding is some people, they go along in life okay, a bit up and down. Something major happens and really the mind goes into such a tailspin, and it's hard to come out. And people who thought I could manage start to feel I'm actually not managing so well. The World Health Organization is telling us the big issue of the future is mental health. The mental health of humanity is spiraling at the moment. And it's because, the way I take back the authority of my mind is to feed my mind with a quality of thought that will cool it down. And that begins with self-awareness and this relationship with God. And I often feel, some of us feel, well, this relationship with God, you don't have to be religious. You don't have to be like, it's a natural relationship. I am an eternal soul. There is a soul that's pure. And sometimes I feel I'm a soul that's taken birth and rebirth. I've reaped the fruits of actions. I know happiness and sorrow. There's a soul that's beyond that game, but a real soul, a real living soul, but a soul without a body. And what I feel is that it's like God or the Supreme Soul is on the FM wavelength, the FM dial. When I'm body conscious, I've forgotten who I am, I'm on the AM wavelength. I know the FM exists, but I can't tune in. I can't get the radio frequency. The more I go up into that soul state, then the reality of that connection is there. And that really, I just say to people, you don't have to believe anything, but just try it, because it can be magical for, restarting something in myself which has gone quiet, gone dead, if I can say. It sparks something within myself I've lost. And so I feel that, yes, the more you meditate with your eyes open, you will carry your state of mind into your life. And another beautiful thing of that, excuse me, rambling on a bit at the moment, I'm really seeing more and more my mind carries its own fragrance. Everyone you come in touch with is coloured by the fragrance of your mind. When you're fragrant, your fragrance of your mind is loving, sweet, joyful, benevolent. It can do wonders, not just in the family, in the workplace as well. And it's not that difficult, it's just experimenting and practicing. I feel a lot today, the main thing of these sorts of events is to do something regularly for myself. Otherwise, as I was saying, 1 in 4 of us has a mental health condition. That's what the World Health Organization says. Anxiety and depression are just absolutely going through the roof. If we don't do something, sometimes we find ourselves in that space. And we all know it's not a very pleasant space to be in. Thank you.
Oh, thank you you, Charlie. So we reached the end. I think that it was the last question because no one turned up. So okay. So thank you very much, Charlie. Maybe we'll have some meditation.
Yes,
We finish some meditation.
Let us all sit quietly. With the thought that all the resources I need to be happy are inside me now. Meditation educates me to use those resources to create a mind of joy and well-being. Again, visualize yourself as the soul. Feel yourself lightly in the center of the forehead. I, the soul, the actor, performing on the world stage through this body. But now I begin to withdraw into my original state of soul consciousness. This state is so calm, a state of mind that's not influenced, a state of mind where I feel a deep sense of self-value, a quiet strength. Just hold the feeling of being the soul. And then through the eye of your mind, your third eye, visualize a radiant jewel of light in front of you, this beautiful radiant jewel. This is the image of the Supreme, the eternal form of God. Just hold this image in the eye of your mind. When I connect with the Supreme, this is yoga, this is union, the highest union of the human mind. And I connect with the lover of the soul, the parent of the soul. An unlimited ocean of all the qualities my mind needs. Just keep holding this image of light in your mind, an ocean of love. Just feel the vibrations of love emanating and filling me. This divine love entering the core of my being. Just like a little child, feel open, allow yourself to feel these loving vibrations. And feel them healing me. Feel these feelings changing me. Feel this love empowering me. The deeper this union, the stronger I feel. When I hold in my mind the truth of who I am and the connection with the one relationship that is always there, I release a mind that's so joyful, so light. There's no fear or worry, because the platform of my thinking is true. The more I practice to experience who I am and connect with the Supreme, I carry this state of mind into each part of my life. I carry these feelings of peace and happiness. And not only do I benefit, but I radiate them to others I come in touch with. To meditate regularly is an act of love for myself.
So thank you very much, Johnny, for this beautiful evening. Are you happy now?
Very good.
Very happy. So Charlie, your journey is finished. There's no need to come back again. No, please be angry, you will come back again. So, if you want to learn to be happy permanently, so Raj Yoga Center, we have 3 Raj Yoga Center, one in Kowloon in Tim Ho and one in Nathan Road, in Kowloon, and one in Ton Chong. So, and we will learn to be happy permanently, all right? So, and you know, our organization is a complementary organization. All workshops, courses, and seminars are free, right? So, I know, I will announce you there's 4 coming programs. You can register the programs at the entrance when we finish this evening. There's Dr. Nyamala will come from the 17th of June. Charlie will give also another program at the Dr. Simon Show Ground House Coffee. When what is? 1 or 2 days later? Tomorrow. Will make us once more time happy. And positive thinking in Asia society, and also Bianca will talk also balance, lifetime, alignment, greatness. Wow, so many things. So thank you so much, and give a big hand to Charlie. But before leaving this venue, you will come and we will offer you a very good dessert. You like dessert? Dessert.